Hey everyone, Internet PCS Book Reader here. Today I want to talk about a Kim Jong-il production, the extraordinary true story of a kidnapped filmmaker, his star actress, and a young dictator rise to power by Paul Fisher. South Korea is a weird country where most of the power in the country lies on specific corporations. It's so out of balance that they have their own term for this owner of the country, chaebol. A term that often comes out if you watch any K-drama or read any manhwa. There was even a meh dystopian novel written by Cho Nam-jo that is loosely based on the corporation ownership of the country, and I think a lot of the injustice that is done by this mega corporation is often allowed not only by the soft power that South Korea have with its money idol and drama and manhwa that semi-successfully sugarcoat a lot of its problem. Then you add that with the fact that their neighbor is North Korea, who is so much worse. I mean, just a few months ago, North Korea dropped a trash and poops to South Korea using balloons. Who does that? As John Johnson once said, it's like if your friend dropped their ice cream while there's a car crash in front of you. No more ice cream is sad, yeah, but there's a car crash just had, so obviously the fallen ice cream is not that bad in comparison. The current North Korea is under the man-child Kim Jong-un that had a fight with another man-child from America a few years ago, and 2 words later are having a keyboard warrior fight in public. But before all of that, we have Kim Jong-il, the father that spawned Kim Jong-un and Kim Yo-jong among others. Kim Jong-il is weird even in the standard of our current world where there are a lot of weirdo on the internet. The guy made up so much rumors about himself so desperately that the joke just wrote itself. He can walk at 3 weeks old, started talking at 8 weeks. He's a pro golf since he come out the womb basically. He doesn't pee, he doesn't poo. There's so much life from this guy that people who posted that they just had a really deep conversation with their children sounds believable. And one of the weirdest things he's ever done is when he kidnapped a South Korean movie director and his wife in an attempt at both increasing North Korea's soft power and for internal propaganda by having them make movie for North Korea. I was very lucky when I found this book in a second-hand bookstore that detailed the life of both Joo In-hee and Shin Sang-ok that got kidnapped and their story during and after the kidnapping. The author goes through first-hand account of the kidnapped director and actress, interviewed many other North Korean defectors, and so much more. It started in August 1982. It's been 2 years since Shin Sang-ok was being held in North Korean prison number 6 inside a solitary cell that is only large enough to lie down. It's much more worse than Mr. Beast's cell and far longer. There's a large window high up on the wall, but of course thick steel bar filled the window. On a scheduled basis, he can get out for 10 minutes for supper and 30 minutes of sun in the prison yard where he'll need to hold his head down and stand still or suffer worse punishment. He's gone for hunger strike in desperation, and on the 5th day, he finally lost consciousness. He woke up in the prison infirmary. There are 3 North Koreans there, some military men and prison guard, but they left saying that he woke up while another prisoner is with him offering him food. He is what is known as trusty, a snitch or a rat that become a prisoner who was other prisoner. It's the usual panopticon. They talk and the trustee seems to be impressed that they care that a prisoner passed out from hunger strike since usually they just let them die. Sang-ok still did not know why they let him live. He was at 55 years old that time, divorced with 4 children, and he was the most famous filmmaker from South Korea who is once known as the Prince of South Korea cinema. He won many awards and has even become famous enough to meet presidents. 4 years earlier, his ex-wife Choi Eun-hee, the most famous actress in South Korea, has disappeared when she was in Hong Kong. When he went there to find her, he also got kidnapped. And here he is now 2 years later, still in the same prison cell in Pyongyang, North Korea. He did not know why he had been taken, but he knew who ordered his kidnapping. North Korean despot of that time, Kim Jong-il, was infatuated with the movie industry and he has been trying to make North Korea films at that time. But because North Korea is such a closed-off country where no one except him can watch Western movie and every movie need to be a propaganda, the movie made there very quickly become very repetitive. Then he saw Shin Sang-ok from his arch nemesis South Korea. What is worse is that Sang-ok was born in North Korea. It's just when he turned 17, he went to Japan to study, and when he went back home, his home country has turned into North Korea. Sang-ok has become so successful at making movies that he got to the 7th Asia Pacific Film Festival, a festival celebrating the best Asian movie. He and his wife Choi Eun-hee has even talked with General Park, South Korea's new president that got into power using military coup to take down the previous president. Shin even made the first and only South Korea film studio at that time, Shin Film. Kim Jong-il, who cannot help compare sizes with President Park, can't stand seeing the success of his enemy, so he hatched a plan that started with Choi Eun-hee. Choi first saw a stage performance as a child and she fell in love with performing, but her father forbid her. Current South Korea still had a major sexist problem, but back then it was much worse. Actors at that time was viewed the same as courtesan, and Choi herself later on will have to deal with many rumors about her. And that's why her father refused to allow her to go to acting, and that's why Choi ran away from home at 17. She was lost for a while, then in an air raid shelter during a drill, she saw Moon Jung-bok, an actress that she knew by name. She approached her and managed to get a job at the theater by lying that she has gotten her parents' permission. At first, she worked for the troupe's costume department, mending dresses, but within a month she was put on stage to play a minor part. Then within 2 years, she had an acting career, and in 1947, at the age of 21, she was cast in her first film where she ended up marrying the film cameraman Kim Hak-sung, a decision she quickly regretted. Kim became the first Korean with the Kim surname that made her life hell. He was already married to a burglar who ran away because of his violence, and he beat Choi the same way he beat his previous wife. He expected her to do all the things that a wife are supposed to do: washing, cleaning, cooking, child rearing, etc. While of course bringing more money to him since her career trajectory was on the rise while job offer for this douchebag has been slowing down. When Korean War broke out in 1950, Choi and her husband failed to make it out and they got captured by the North Korean army. She was signed up by them to be an entertainer for the troops and sent north, where a year later, her and other performers managed to escape, taking advantage of a panic during an outing. They were taken by the South Korean army, and this time they were forced to be an entertainer for their side. It was much worse in the South because South Korea had the backing of United Nations. Most of them are not busy preparing for war. As a result, a lot of the performers was sexually assaulted during their time entertaining the South Korean army, including Choi, who once again got beaten up and forced to endure many things. The war was over soon, and unfortunately a lot of this assault goes unchecked and unpunished because South Korea, like many, was a society where the women are usually the one held responsible for the dishonor that came from the crime committed by others. She went back home reunited once again with her husband that has been injured during the war, and once again she had to endure the things that the military officer has done to her, only this time by her own husband. Women at that time have only a few legal rights, so she stayed despite the continuous assault because she had nowhere to go. She ran away from home, she doesn't know where her parents are after the war, and as a wife she had more duties than right. It is her duty to hold the family together, her duty to be obedient to her husband, raise children, and be respectful to the in-laws, to make the family looks good. To keep face and save face, she was bound and unable to escape. Choi and Shin met when Shin has not yet become a famous movie producer and director in Daegu, about 150 meters south from Seoul. While Pyongyang has been devastated by the American bombing until only 3 major buildings was left behind, Daegu, that becomes the headquarters for the United Nations, stayed mostly intact. Months after the war is over, there are still parks and major buildings left unscathed from the war, which is why there are still theaters there. Shin comes to one of these theaters to scout an artist that has started to become the most famous actress in South Korea at that time to be the main actress for his second film, Korea, a semi-documentary video to show the beauty of South Korea that at that time is more famed for war and poverty. But about halfway through the show, the actress that he has been scouting for collapsed. Shin went to the stage and tried to help. When she is not responsive, he quickly carried her off to the hospital, and that's how Choi Eun-hee and Shin Sang-ok met. Choi was overworked and collapsed from exhaustion and hunger and all the beating. Her worthless husband was unable to work because of war injury, and despite her fame, she was poor, too poor to even heat up the house. Unlike the hard life that Choi has gone through, Shin had a much easier life in comparison. His father was an oriental medicine doctor and he has gone to all the best schools. He showed artistic talent since early, which is why he was sent to study to Tokyo to study painting. When he went back home, his hometown Chongqing that was in the north is now off limit, and every moderate seems to have left the country. Everyone is either a communist or a right-wing extremist. It's no longer the country that he knew, but he eventually found his first job working for the Americans that occupied the country, painting propaganda for them and then some film posters for cinemas that are still in business. He then became an apprentice at a tiny independent Koryo film studio, getting some experience with their old and badly maintained equipments, until he finally got a full-time job serving in the government military promotion department, where he made military propaganda for them like Michael Bay. He borrowed a ton of equipment from the Americans while working there to make his first movie, The Evil Knight, about Young Boon, a Western princess, Korean prostitute who only catered Americans' GI. It didn't make much money, but at least it gave him enough attention and recognition for his talent. It was not long after this that he met Choi Eun-hee. They talked a lot during the production of the film Korea, and finally after so long it was in scene that Choi saw a place where she can belong, where she can be safe and be herself. When tabloids started smelling scandals of the two of them, especially on Choi, she decided to rip the band-aid and sue for divorce, which she win. Then both of them decided to marry in a small dingy motel. They continued to make movies together and become the most famous couple in Korea history at that time. And speaking of history, let's look back at the country that couple lived for a bit. In 1960, Korea was taken by Japan for a stepping stone to go to China, and I'm sure many people are aware the army that is stationed there did whatever they want, including coming to people's home, taking things, and using girls that they see. When Japan officially surrendered after the bombing, things didn't get much better for Korea. Soviet took over its northern part, and America, who at that time viewed Soviet as an arch enemy enough to hatch a plan to drop 40 thermonuclear on them, held back Soviets takeover from the south, so the country thus split into two. And their suffering did not end there. With the backing of Soviet, Kim Il-sung decided to attack the south, starting the Korea War. America, who did not see the incoming attack, took over 4 months to prepare a defense and counter, resulting in the death of more than 26,000 people under North Korean attack. For the first time ever, an army under the banner of the United Nations got involved during the war, and they finally ended the war. Nothing much changed though, it's still North Korea and South Korea, but now they are fully aware that they are enemies since millions of dead bodies has formed a rift between them. And it was with this backdrop of the people needing escapism, Kim Sang-ok and Choi Eun-hee. The entertainment they provided gave the people a much needed escape from the stress of life, and as a result they become two of the richest and most famous people in Korea. But during that time, conflict between the North and South never stopped. It got so bad that in the South, propaganda about the evil of the North banned any information of Kim Il-sung, including his face. And as a result of that, no one knows about Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong-il. While the lies from the South cause its people to be less educated on the North and their history as a whole country, the lies from the North is propaganda that makes Kim Jong-il into God. All the lies about him from the start of the video is something that the people from North Korea learned since they were born. But the actual guy himself was born with not much particular talent about anything. Born under the name of Yuri Ilsenovich Kim, all he learned about how to govern our life, he learned it from movies, the thing that also becomes his passion. When he grew older, he changed his name and a lot of his history. Later on, he even erased his father's new wife and her children from history. He have witnessed the Kapsan purge that sent his father's competitors to the mountain that meant either exile or death. Then he became the director of movie and propaganda. He created a film studio with a country budget that comes from Soviet and China. While South Korea movie industry was independently self-funded, North Korea fully funded its movie industry with studios larger than even the MGM film studio in Hollywood. He even had his own personal director drama when he fell in love with an already married actress that was older than him, Sung Hye-rim, an affair that is forbidden in North Korea, especially as the son of the leader. They are supposed to be married with a younger virgin girl. But they had a relationship behind Kim Il-sung's back until they had a son named Kim Jong-nam, who was kept hidden for years, living a very indoor life since no one can know where he comes from. Maybe to overcompensate that, Kim Jong-il spoiled on his son, giving him gold bars, cars, and guns when the child showed the slightest interest. He even tried to kidnap a South Korean comedian because his son wanted to watch him perform live instead of from TV. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-il is still making movies, buying the most up-to-date film equipment, producing Sea of Blood and The Flower Girl. While in North Korea, The Flower Girl got big enough to be in their currency, it's still bad movies. The propaganda got in the way of storytelling, which makes the ending and the plot progression feels very forced to become North Korea good, Japan bad. Then despite having all the latest equipments, no one seems to know how to use them properly. The audio is not synced, the filming is also according to plot progression instead of which scene should be shot first for efficiency, so it took far longer than it should be to complete a film. By the time the film was sent for screening abroad, we already have blockbusters like Godfather, Star Wars, and Jaws. So audience laugh and mock at Kim Jong-il's movies. Meanwhile, one of their enemy, Japan, has just received movie awards because of Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. He will not endure this humiliation, and he had a plan to fix this or someone to fix this. Shin Song-wook has gotten everything he could ever want. He's one of the richest, most successful men in South Korea. He can phone the president, and he is married with the most beautiful woman in the country. But he cannot make the movies he wanted in South Korea now. Because of the constant assassination attempt, President Park becomes so paranoid that the censorship for television has gotten much worse. No sense of complaining is allowed in South Korean film now, not even complaining about the weather. Then he made a few stupid decisions to try for tax evasion, which only caused him to get sued for a ton of money, with a combination of buying spaces that he cannot fully use to make movies. He even claimed movies made by Chinese film as his own movie in order to fulfill quota for subsidiary studios he created. He started to become quite full of himself after so many back-to-back success. Meanwhile, Choi Eun-hee, who wanted to have a child, found that she can't. Maybe it's due to the constant assault by her husband and by the South Korean officer, or maybe she was born not being able to have them, but it didn't matter. She just wanted a child. So they decided to adopt, and finally she had a happy life, married to the man she loves and being a mother to their adopted children. A fulfilling life while teaching others how to act now at a performance academy that she made. That is until the news comes out that Shin had a child with another actress. She wanted it to not be true because they obviously love each other, right? She tried to go to the actress' house to make sure if the rumors was maybe false. She tried to get the courage to go in until it was late at night when the door opened and out comes Shin Sang-ok. Everything started to crumble around Shin because he kept making mistakes. When he started to go bankrupt, he even made cheap erotica trying to get money out of that, which not only flops but further tarnished his reputation. President Park, who is still loyal to his wife that died from taking a bullet for him, also cannot stomach what Shin did to Choi and cut off his friendship after Shin kept complaining about his censorship. Shin's studio went from 300 employees to fewer than 10 people before he was finally banned from making movies because Shin kept waiting for lawsuit with his movies. Then when he had another children with the actress he was having an affair with, Choi finally decided to divorce him after 22 years of marriage. She was understandably heartbroken from the constant betrayal, but she had 2 children to take care of and a school that got financially wrecked because of Shin's bankruptcy. The school had 700 students at that time, and Choi also saw them as a responsibility to help them. That's why when an offer comes from Hong Kong to help run the school, she decided to take it not knowing that it was a trap set by Kim Jong-il to kidnap her in order to lure Shin Sang-ok to come. For the third time in her life, she was under the captive of a government military. They dragged her and carried her to North Korea, where she was welcomed directly by Kim Jong-il, who was there to shake her hand. They took her to a remote villa where they took her South Korean passport and ID away from her. They tried to make her feel welcome, giving her daily gifts and the best possible food. She stayed at a gaudy big house named Building Number 1, where none of the doors can be locked and all the clothing mysteriously designed to fit her. And she was guarded and watched all the time. Kim Jong-il invited her to dinner parties many times, which always seems weird to her because she is normal and this is North Korea where a mortal like Kim Jong-il is treated and acted like he is God. It's also in these parties where many of North Korean policies were often made while the people were drunk with whiskey, brandy, and cognac. They tried to make her into part of the believer of North Korea propaganda, making her read propaganda letters and write thank you letters to Kim Jong-il, which of course didn't work because most of them was built to trick people who just comes out of the womb. Meanwhile, Shin, who has noticed that Choi has been missing for a few weeks, tried to find her. He managed to find evidence that North Korea has kidnapped her with the help of Hong Kong's police, but he can't really do much besides that. He also cannot stay in Hong Kong for long since he doesn't have much money because of the ex-movie mogul hasn't been able to find work after his bankruptcy. So when an offer to get a fake passport to stay there comes unexpectedly, he took it, hoping that it'll give him also a chance to maybe start making movies there in Hong Kong. But just like what Choi's experienced, it's also a threat to kidnap him to North Korea. Choi lived for a while in this weird alternate universe where she no longer need to worry about money and could have anything she wanted that could be acquired with money, but no one else in the country are relatable at all to her. She met a few other kidnapping victims, which is quite common especially on the 70s, where one of North Korea project is to kidnap people for labors. It's slavery in Albert name. For example, Yokota Megumi, a Japanese girl that was abducted by North Korea since she was 13, who was forced to marry in North Korea in order to teach Japanese to the military there. Most of these victims were Japanese, but there were a few from South Korea, Chinese, and even some from London, Beirut, Jordan, Oslo, Macau, Zagreb, etc., all over the world. Japan even had a national association for the rescue of Japanese kidnapped by North Korea, who is still fighting even now to rescue tons of victims of kidnapping. And at that point, these are the only people Choi could relate with in North Korea. One of them even converted her to Catholicism. The woman who converted her to Catholic is a Cantonese woman from China by the name of Catherine Hong. She's also fluent in Korea because she has been there for 1 year. She was working as a tour guide in 1978 when two men in their 30s who spoke English really well hired her for a tour around Macau. They go around various parts of non-tourist spots for a few days when the two guys asked for a tour around the coast. She agreed and they met with another woman who said that she came from Thailand. Both women went into the boat with the two guys and was kidnapped to Pyongyang. We never know what happened to Catherine after she met with Choi, but a lot of the kidnapped people doesn't end well, and the reason why there are so much kidnapping, especially in 1970, was because of Kim Jong-il. He was not educated on any actual military training or espionage because he never worked in any intelligence agency. He never even left his country. He learned most of this from movies, especially movies like James Bond, who he watched religiously since he was a child, even making a rogue agency to pirate and smuggle movies from outside into Pyongyang so he can watch more movies. And just like a lot of people who learn socializing through only the internet, Kim Jong-il learned to run his country like he's the main character from the movies he watched. South Korea alone estimates that there are more than 4,000 South Korean citizens that was abducted into North Korea within 1952 to 2005. And as I mentioned, many places become a victim of Korean spy that has been trained to kidnap people. Doina Bumbe, who was born in Romania and studied fine arts in Italy to become a painter, got kidnapped by luring her with a job opportunity in Japan. Most of these kidnapping victims, like Doina, like Megumi, lived their entire life in North Korea without rescue, a fate that could very possibly be the fate of Choi Eun-hee and Shin Sang-ok. She hasn't met Shin yet despite being in the same country because Shin tried to run away. The armies of North Korea and Kim Jong-il that doesn't understand why would he ever want to run away from them despite their kindness decided to put him in prison for education where he attempted a second escape. And that's what got him to prison number 6 from the start of the book, where he'll spend 2.5 years in. Meanwhile, Choi Eun-hee was being taken from places to places in order to get less contact with the other kidnapping victims. She even saw North Korea in famous poppy field, which is one of North Korea's source of income, along with their counterfeit US dollar bills called Supernote, which is also infamous for being so well made, it's hard to differentiate it with real money at a glance. She also had a fair share of re-education in her captivity, an experience both Choi and Shin have there before they met. They still haven't met when their mutual friends in South Korea, President Park, was shot dead by his own friend because he started to turn more and more into a dictator. After years of the same repetitive agony that both Shin and Choi had to endure, Kim Jong-il finally decided to let them meet, where he declared that they'll have a wedding ceremony on his next birthday, of course without their consent. Shin will have to work for Kim to make propaganda movies for him, and Choi will have to be some sort of an ambassador for North Korea public image. But more importantly than that, they finally met again for the first time since their divorce. Despite all that has happened to them in their past, these past few years they've gone through in North Korea separately has united them more than ever. And now that the two of them are not alone in the hellhole that is North Korea, they can work together once again like they used to do. But this time the stake is far higher than just to gain an audience, their freedom. Together they started to plan their great escape from the director grabs, and the first step of that plan is to befriend Kim Jong-il, lower his guard around them. They went to many parties together. They even made public to news media that they were definitely not kidnapped, which almost no one believed because behind them there are always guards standing around as their bodyguards. But they even managed to get a tape recorder from the new Pyongyang department shop, which they used to record a conversation with Kim Jong-il, which they used later on to try to prove that they haven't been brainwashed by North Korea, since it is illegal and punishable by death to record the supreme leader. In a twist of fate, Shin, who has his right to make movies taken by South Korea, was now given that right back by North Korea, while at the same time he is trying to escape from North Korea back to South Korea. Shin and Choi will make 7 films for North Korea while waiting for the perfect chance to escape together. Some of the most notable ones are Emissary of No Return, their first return in public eyes, and as a North Korea filmmaker nonetheless. Salt, which earned Choi Best Actress Award at Moscow International Film Festival, and of course the monster on the thumbnail, Pulgasari, the Iron Eater, where North Korea gave Shin unlimited budget to create what is basically a knockoff Godzilla. It is the worst movie Shin has ever made, and he never made any more good movie after creating such a masterpiece of stinker, but it succeeded in making Kim Jong-il happy and gave them more freedom to create the next movie. All this time, Shin has deterred any attempt at escape because of his trauma from his last 2 failed attempts, so he wanted to be extra sure that he and Choi can escape without enduring prison number 6 again. They went to Austria, Vienna, and stayed at the Continental Hotel along with the usual North Korean bodyguards, where they managed to slip a note to the hotel staff to contact the Austria ambassador. They then made a plan for an interview with a Japanese journalist named Akira Enoki so they can be alone with the interviewer. They had an interview in the taxi and told the journalist asking for his help to escape when they noticed a car following them. But thanks to the traffic and the help of Akira, they got out of their taxi and ran to the US embassy there. The note that they gave to the hotel has been dutifully sent to the embassy, and because of that the process to take care of their safety went quickly. Enoki even helped them once again to become a witness to their escape. Oh, what a guy. And for the first time in a long time, they were finally free. With their escape, the end of North Korea movie industry starts. Kim Jong-il tried many times to resurrect it, but it never catch up to its previous success. The people who have watched good movies no longer wanted to watch bad movies. Meanwhile, his enemy, South Korea, started to gain more fame in movie industry, which got only better as time goes on after his death in 2011. For the kidnapping, Kim Jong-il first tried to blame the Americans, but when Choi and Shin made a public statement about their kidnapping, Kim Jong-il immediately changed his excuse, claiming that it was South Korea's mistake. While internally, he started a campaign to paint Shin Sang-ok as a traitor despite his 7 movies that has made him and Choi into a home name for North Korea civilians. Not long after that, Kim Il-sung died and famine hit North Korea, and both those events, especially the constant hunger, formed a crack on their propaganda machine that he needed to prioritize more. The couple also stayed on America's under protection and in such public spotlight because of the kidnapping news, so it is harder for Kim Jong-il to have any revenge. But it seemed he didn't have to do anything to get any revenge to Shin Sang-ok. While he finally got Choi's forgiveness and she remarried him, as a workaholic, he's never satisfied in this later chapter of his life. Maybe it's the cultural difference, maybe it's his old age, or maybe he got too used to putting propaganda message in his filmmaking experience in North Korea, that his initial return to filmmaking are both cheap anti-Korean movie and cheap anti-South Korean movie without the depth that he used to have. Then he finished his career with making commercial and critical Disney movies failure. He even tried to remake Pulgasari into a movie for children named Galgamet, which also failed. After Osumi, the actress who is the mother of Shin Sang-ok affair, died while she was visiting them on a drunken car accident in Hawaii, Shin and Choi, who always felt like an outsider in America, decided to go back to South Korea. Life didn't immediately got better for them. They were treated as North Korea spy, forced to go to multiple press conferences to keep saying the same drivel about how they haven't defected to North Korea over and over again. They once again become political tool for the government. The right wing wanted to make them into an example of the brutality of the criminals in the North, while the left see them as tools of the conservative propaganda and refused to believe their story. And a lot of the items that they took from North Korea during their escape even got confiscated, so they never really got as rich as they were or as famous as they were. The public thus warmed up to them despite the usual shit people at the government. Shin even got to become a judge at Cannes Festival once, and Choi had many more rewards for her contribution to South Korea cinema. They live a happy life as long as they have each other. They settled in South Korea, home, where they never separate again. They lived together until Shin Sang-ok died in 2006. Maybe because movie was one of the core of this wild true story, I really wanted to see this be made either as a limited series or a movie, and the main story should be from Choi Eun-hee perspective. She's gone through so much from being a victim of her father, a victim of her husband, a victim of war, a victim of another husband, a victim of North Korea attempt at making propaganda, but she didn't live her life like she was a victim. If anything, she defies all the odds and lived happily. The strength she carried with her during all those times is captivating, and I think the authors agree with that by closing the book with an interview with her in 2013. 5 years before her death, where many mourned for her and gave her gifts of flowers as farewell to this legendary woman. There was a picture of Choi Eun-hee that was taken with her standing beside Marilyn Monroe at the peak of Marilyn fame, and both of them look equally as stunning. I'm not sure if anything that will capture her life starting from her youth will ever come beside this book, because in a lot of them South Korea doesn't look the best. A few that documented her life, like the Lovers and the Despot documentary or Atrocity Cat's excellent YouTube video, covered mostly just the kidnapping. Because of that, I highly recommend just reading this book to get the full story. The book itself is really well written. It is so easy to follow and only have a few parts that went on for a little tiny bit too long, but it is never boring. It also has many sources that you can read further if you want to. Especially now with the most famous North Korea defector being a psyop for North Korea to promote North Korea brand of nationalism in America while making the story of North Korea other defectors sound dubious because she lied as much as Kim Jong-il. Books like this with a ton of research and sources for further research you can do yourself seems to be more and more important. I give this a 4.75. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.